Silent invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Robin, now that your computer's working, could you call the roll?
I can't get my notes.
Councilmember Ford,
Present.
Councilmember Bastian,
Here.
Councilmember Stiltner,
Here.
Vice Mayor Tremont,
Here.
Mayor Burdette.
Here.
It
That
sounds
means-
like the email I just sent you guys is not opening, so I'm gonna send it in PDF. Just give me 1 second. Please.
Yeah, it's not. Sorry, the PowerPoint is not working.
So maybe as
While you're
as-
doing that, Jake, why don't you go ahead and frame the conversation for us?
I will, sir. So this evening, we're going to take a look first at all the other non-general fund, the proprietary funds, the enterprise funds that don't affect the millage rate. We haven't taken a detailed look at the revenues and expenses of those yet. We provided a budget book late last week, that gave you all funds to include the updated general fund. So the first half will go over those funds. We'll talk about them and discuss any issues that may be apparent. But as you well know, these are all based on the fees that we've established for drainage, for solid waste, and for water and sewer. Those rates are not did not go up in the past year. They've remained pretty stable. So we'll go over those. I have a few updates. As you understand this time of year that the budget ebbs and flows daily. So I'll show one spot where we think that we need to execute a little bit less, and we'll cut $1 million out of, I think it's an R&R fund, the 403 fund. I'll show you that. And then we'll move into the second half of the brief, which is the general fund. And my intent in the general fund is to go through, and I can go through the actual general fund line items that are of interest to you from the book, and the a la carte items that are funded with millage, and the a la carte items that are funded with fund balance, and determine where you sit with those. There are a few items too, right, Scott, that are not yet decided, that have been funded with millage, that I'd like to take a look at and see if I can get consensus on where we're going with those, and give you an idea of where we are. We'll also have up on the two screens that I mentioned earlier before the meeting started, we will have the spreadsheet that Tracy gave us last year that will provide us the ability to add and subtract the a la carte items to determine what the end millage would be. There are what if scenarios if you're targeting millage. I know council as a matter of course we don't target for millage, but it is good to know what that millage will look like when you look at projects or in this case items on the a la carte menu.
Okay.
All right.
With that, thank you, Robin. The third time was the charm. Dr. Scott?
Thank you. Mayor and Council, it's a pleasure to be in front of you again to get closer to finalizing the budget for FY20. The PowerPoint and the slides that you have in front of you in hard copy are the same, so there's no change on those. Excuse me. For our purpose this evening, we want to update you on our FY20 proposed all funds budget, which includes the proprietary funds, all other funds, and the general fund, and to discuss the budget and the general fund millage for the first public hearing. And those hearings are coming up. The first one is on September 11th at 5:30. Please note the earlier time.
2 weeks from tomorrow.
Yes, sir. And the second public hearing and finalization of the budget will be on Tuesday, September 24th at 6:30 p.m.
Let me just stop you right there
Said
and
5:30.
editorialize that the reason why we
Said
are having
5:30.
a public hearing on a Wednesday, which is a day we don't normally meet, for those of you that are watching and
5:30?
listening, is that we did not want to have a public hearing on the budget and your taxes at the same time that other agencies, like the county, is having a budget hearing and setting your taxes at the same time. So we didn't want to do that at the same time in case people wanted to be able to go to both meetings, they wouldn't be able to. But both those, the taxing authorities are working on the same thing that affects you. So everybody knows that we're meeting on Wednesday so that we can accommodate everybody, so that anybody who wants to go to both the public hearing for the county and for the city are able to.
Thank you, Mayor.
Scott?
And just a
I-
reminder
Scott,
that... Yes.
I'd like to clarify, Rob and I have been whispering here. This is a workshop, and we're fine with this, but we have reason to believe that the Tuesday, September 24th meeting is also at 5:30. And this is coming from the clerk who schedules this, so we'll,
No?
unless...
My error then.
Unless there's a, no, that's fine. Unless there's a reason to have it at 6:30, Mayor, we'll flesh that out with you.
I think we were all good with doing that at 5:30
Yeah.
ahead of all the rest of the business.
And keep it,
As
this
long-
is just,
As long as that's how we've advertised.
yep. And this is a regular meeting or a special meeting? Special meeting.
It would normally be your workshop night, but it's a special meeting for the second hearing.
Correct.
For the budget.
And that's it.
There's no other
Right.
matters.
That's the 24th.
So you want to stick with 5:30 both?
Special- That way,
5:30 works.
we have the special meeting at 5:30, and that way, if we need a workshop on other matters afterwards, we can.
Okay.
If not, at least we'll be consistent with the 5:30.
And that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, consistent. So 5:30 both nights. We'll make that change. Sorry, Scott.
Thank you.
What was
No,
the, Jake, sorry.
it's always the
You'll
seven to
get through
right.
these 24 slides
24th,
eventually.
5:30.
And 24?
I'll go faster this time, Mayor.
24th, 5:30.
That's it.
As City Manager indicated, we first want to go through the other funds. And I'm using a new program called Tableau to present the data to you, and I'm finding that the print is quite small, so I apologize in advance for that, and that's why I wanted to give you the hard copy. Apparently, it forms it down to the size that will fit on the page, and even though I make the print quite large, it makes it smaller, so I apologize in advance for that. I'll have to think of a better way to present the data. If you look at the first one is a major capital projects fund, you can see that the yellow colors are FY19, the green are FY20 proposed, and the little blue dots are the change between the two. And Jake, you may want to address that first one. I know that was a change that you had identified.
Right, so that's the 403 fund that I was discussing. I've had recent conversations with Lynn Stevens regarding two projects, and she's got some ways to combine projects and save money in FY21. So right at the get-go, if you look at the blue dot, it shows $1.64 million in increase from spending last year on the 403 fund. We are going to decrease that by $1 million. It's a $500,000 or half of the generator project for the water treatment, Lynn, water treatment plant, and $500,000 in another project. So we'll be reducing that for first hearing, and that increase will be $640,000 increase over last year. That $640,000 it consists of a few $200,000 projects that we're going to complete above and beyond what we did last year.
Reading across from left to right, the second fund is the 505, the lease replacement fund. It's up slightly at $170,000. The third fund there is the 405, or the Water Sewer Impact Fee Fund. It's up slightly as well, and the Capital Projects Fund 301 is down slightly. Looking at some additional capital project funds, you've got a couple of the same ones there, excuse me, but this picks up all of the ones that we have as capital project funds, down to even the smaller ones, and that's just for your information. As far as major other funds, we're looking at, in terms of the revenue, the the Fund 401, the Major Water Sewer Fund, is actually down $100 and some $1,000. You can see the other ones, other than the 501 fund, which is the IT fund, is up, as well as the Fund 109, which is the Building Impact Fee Fund, or Building Special Revenue Fund. The major increases for the IT fund are the ERP implementation and the related costs with that. The Building Special Revenue Fund is based on the impact fees for the new construction that's going on. So that second one, the Building Special Revenue Fund, is a nice thing to see with the growth that's happening in the city.
Scott,
Yes, sir.
and this being a workshop, so ladies, gentlemen, if you need to stop them at any point in time with a question, I'd rather do it as we go instead of gunny sacking at the end and backtracking.
Right.
The water sewer, you said we're down 182,000 in revenue, still at 27.5 million. What accounts for that?
Trying to remember. I believe it's a change in the transfer. Is that correct, Emma? Nope. There you go.
Left hand, not right hand.
We'll look into that, Mayor. and get
If
back.
you, yeah, please get back to me, because that seems significant, especially when we've got more homes and businesses coming online. It seems that we'd be using and selling more water. I'm sure that there's probably an interfund of some sort, but I'd like to know what that is. Thanks.
Is reclaim part of that fund?
Yes, there are
I think that's,
5 divisions there, Lynn, in that
Water,
fund?
sewer?
Yeah.
didn't we go through a significant amount of time where reclaim
We didn't use
really
reclaim.
wasn't being utilized, and
Yeah.
so
And that could be it. I know we did, went through the
Overages
same thing last year too.
might be there.
That could be it, but if that's it, I'd like to know.
Mayor,
And
also.
you can get back to us on that one.
And we will. And also in the 109 fund, usually we don't have any requests for personnel other than general fund or in others. But the 109 fund, this building special revenue, obviously we've seen a pretty big uptick in building revenue, and we're finding ourselves needing another building inspector. That building inspector, we could contract out for that, but we're finding that contracting out is not getting us the necessary inspector or the quality that the city demands. It's one of the things we pride ourselves on. I've had multiple developers say, "You're tough, but you do it right." And so in that Fund 109 is a request for another building inspector that you need to know about. You need to give consensus that you want it or don't. We can't just shove it in there, but it is not general fund funded.
Well, the revenue is there. Does anybody have a problem with that? No? Okay.
The total is just under 57,000 compensation for that position.
Thank you.
A bargain at half the price.
Okay.
Okay.
The next slide is on debt service funds. We have several. You would think that on average the debt service funds would be going down each year, and you can see that generally, with the exception of your, excuse me, the TIF funds. The first one there, the 240,000 green, it's up slightly, as well as the other one, it's up slightly as well. That's based on the debt schedule. There's a higher payment that's coming in. This one happens every 5 years, and this coming year is one of those that increase it takes effect. The next slide, and again, I apologize for the size, but this is all of the funds taken together for the city, including the general fund, the other operating funds, capital project funds, debt funds, and the TIFs. If you look on the total upper right-hand corner, you can see it's 117 million for all of the funds taken together. And the breakout is there. And the next page is just a percentage shown by each of the funds what the major portions of those funds are. For example, on the general fund, you can see the police make up 37%, fire 24%, and on down. And the related capital projects, the largest is the solid waste fund, or excuse me, the water sewer fund, followed by the solid waste fund. So just those are there for your reference. As far as the other major funds, this slide shows the categories of expense. You can see, remember the $27,500,000 for the water sewer fund. It's made up of the components of personnel, operating capital, transfers, and some other ones for the other funds. You can see the majority of money for that is the transfers, a little over $10 million. And that's transfers to other components of the 401 fund, and also for other expenses that would be hitting other funds that transfers going to other parts of that fund and to other funds. And for your presentation coming up, we will have a summary of all of the transfers of the funds going back and forth, and that will be for you on the next meeting that we have.
Can we get that a week before our meeting, please?
Yes, ma'am, we're just about done with that, so we should have that completed for you in time. This slide shows the change from prior year by the major other funds, starting on the left-hand side with the 401 fund and going across from high to low. Again, the major ones are for the 501 fund and the 109 fund, the major chains. But it has a few other funds that weren't there before.
501 is IT.
IT, that's correct, sir. Yes, sir.
And Mayor, that we talked about that one-on-one. The 501, that big jump is, I call it the rat through the snake, but we have ERP. In addition to the other
It's the
IT
overlap.
stuff, we have ERP and we have HTE, and once Workday comes online, certain parts of HTE will slough off. We're keeping certain parts until other modules come along, but eventually we'll be out of that business.
But initially, there'll be a need for redundancy.
There will. So I'd like to get rid of it in 6 months, but it'll probably take an entire year to get rid of any HTE item that Workday covers.
All right, 6 months it is.
Yeah. So we'll see.
Scott, on the previous page, sorry about that. On the transfers, those are all transfers out from that account somewhere else?
Yes. Well, transfers out and transfers in, and that worksheet that Councilwoman Ford asked for will show coming in and outs.
Those are strictly moving dollars.
Right.
But
We move from 401 into the general fund, do we not? We transfer in
Yes.
there.
There's it's called a pilot or payment in lieu of
Right.
taxes fund that comes in.
Right.
It's about $1.5 million, I believe.
I think that shows on our revenue slide later in the brief, correct? No?
Not in this presentation.
Not in the second part? All right.
No, I'm good, Dick. Okay.
All right.
Again, this is a breakout of the other funds showing the categories of operating expense, transfers, personnel, capital, non-operating contingency, loan pool debt service, and grants and aid. But the largest you can see is the operating expense. Actually, transfers for all of the other funds has gone down a slight bit, a little bit up for personnel, down for capital. Non-operating or contingency has gone up. On these funds, as you may recall, that they need to be balanced, and the difference between revenue and expense is carried in the contingency component to make the funds balance. And that's all we have on the proprietary funds. If there's, you also have, in addition, the detail that is made up for all of these in your book, budget book. So yes.
Any questions at this point?
You're
So-
rolling right along.
So I'd like to make a comment before we move on, Mayor.
Please.
We, in the past, have gone through these funds with not much conversation. I would like you to know that our staff treats these funds with the same amount of fiscal stewardship as the general fund. I know the general fund takes a heck of a lot of our time because it impacts directly the taxes and the property taxes of our people that gets manipulated yearly. The proprietary funds are based on fee, and we have the spirited conversations about those fees, just like we do taxes, just not yearly. And those will be coming up in the upcoming years. We've kind of done a little expectation setting and public information on the solid waste issues we have. We're going to be coming up on a pretty big solid waste jump. We've already seen other cities, with huge eyes going, our solid waste is going to cost what? So Lynn and her team are working on creative ways to keeping our solid waste costs down. And God bless her, she may be able to do it. So, but I want you to know that our staff does track our execution and treat these funds with an equal amount of cautious eye.
I appreciate that. And you and I had this conversation this morning about a number of things. One, I do like taking a look at all our fee structures at a minimum every 5 years, because the last thing I want is something where we've gone a dozen years and then when we make a change, there's huge sticker shock because we were afraid to act responsibly when we should have. And then also, when you do that, you make sure that your fees are appropriately priced in the other direction as well. If you're overcharging,
You bet.
you're not sitting on that. Jake, you and I also talked this morning about we rely on our department heads to be experts in the field, and I rely on you to make sure that they execute operationally and their budgets. We up here, the five of us, are responsible for setting policy and setting good policy, but in order to do that, we are heavily reliant on the people who work for you to provide us good information and do that. So yeah, there is an absolute level of trust that has to be there, and I think there is with you and your people to go out and do what's best for the city and the taxpayers and being good stewards of their money in these other funds, not just the general fund.
Well, thank you. Especially Lynn, she's got the preponderance of proprietary funds. She's a great steward of the dollar. She's got a good team down there, and what I enjoy the most about what Lynn and Ronnie Buttram and Steve Parnell and the entire team are doing down there is they're coming up with innovative ways to package projects, and so my public works director and public utilities director talk to each other every second of every day. It's a great thing.
Even when they go home at night.
They wear the same clothes. It's sick, but the advantage of that is phenomenal in cost avoidance and cost savings.
Well, I like what you just did there. In complimenting her and her whole team, you also just eloquently raised the bar and expectations at the same time.
How about
Well done,
that?
Jay.
That's what 4 days at a leadership conference will do to you. But she does do a phenomenal job of leading that team and coming up with innovative ways to do stuff. And I couldn't be more pleased with some of the interesting things. If you recall, we did a invitation to negotiate for biosolids a couple of years ago. And that was Lynn's first, or maybe the tail end. Maybe we started with her. But at the end of the day, instead of just jumping on some, let's try this thing, we determined that wasn't in our best interest, and staying the steady route was the way to go. And you talk about cost avoidance. There are people. Number one, I think 1 or 2 companies shut down, right? And that biosolid experiment that we could have stepped into could have cost us a lot of money. So my hat's off to the team for being smart enough and understanding that system enough to just say no. So I appreciate it.
Okay. Marching merrily on.
Marching on. We're now going to go back through the general fund. I'll highlight some slides that you've seen before. And as Jake had mentioned, we'll get to the a la carte items for you to make your determinations on what you would like to do. As a reminder, the property tax summary, we have $3.4 billion of taxable value, excluding the CRAs. Included in that is a $248,000 or $1 million tax roll increase. Of that, 55 million was net additions or deletions from the prior year, which is quite good, a significant increase percentage. If we look at the property tax revenue, the ad valorem tax, at the city manager's budget at 4.5766, which was the max mill rate, and 95%, that's just under 15 million revenue. And then as for your consideration, 1 mil equals $3,200,000, or a tenth of a mil is just a little under 330,000 for a frame of reference for you. Last year, the total millage rate was 4.9211, which included 2.923 of debt service. This year, at the max mill rate, 4.5677, the debt service rate has gone down. It's 0.2725 for a total projected at 4.8402. If you look to the right columns there, you'll see that that's a 0.08 change, or a 1.64% decline at those particular rates.
Scott, I'm a little confused why we're showing this, because I thought council set a trim rate, max millage, lower than the 4.84.
4.5677.
That's the max mill rate.
This one right
When,
here.
when you add in the debt service, which is separate, it goes to.
Yeah.
That's correct. Now that would
That
be
was
Well, did we
operating millage.
specify that at the point that we
Yes.
set the max?
The trim is,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
trim
but-
set it just the operating.
Okay.
Operating.
Did that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
This is a slide that was shown previously, just for your information there. 884 parcels with zero taxable value. This is a slide that broken out by district. If you look on the bottom left, on the yellow there, on the top left section, District 1, the 4.3710 is the rollback rate. The top one is a city manager budget rate at 4.5677. If you look to the right on the rollback rate, that would be a projected annual tax of 237 for District 1. If it's at the max mill rate, that would be 247 annual dollars, for about a $10 a year increase. If you look on the lower right-hand corner in District 4, using the same analysis, 550 to 574, just a little under $25 increase.
I have
Yes,
a
sir.
question. Going down these millage rates, they're all declining, but then there's one right above the roll, or 3 above the rollback rate. It's 4.58.
And all the, so that's a, is that a typo?
That is a typo, yes.
Okay, so that should have been
Oh, I
less
see
than
it.
the 4.48.
Yeah, 4.8.
Okay, because it's on, I just was curious because it shows a,
Is that where, is that exactly where your house is?
no, but it shows a bigger, no, it shows a bigger number. It's
No, I
on-
got it.
It's on
I
all
got
of
it.
the,
Yeah,
like,
that's a-
all the numbers are declining and then that one
That's a
goes up.
typo.
Sorry.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's my error.
Nice
Okay.
try, Drew.
It's next door to them.
Mhm.
Looking at the change in the debt millage rate from FY18, it was .1374, it's now .2725. For our debt service in FY20, $902,000. And the millage rate of .2725 will provide enough revenue to pay that debt service.
And Mayor and Council, it's, at this point, I'd like to point out that, that Scott and I met, when was that, Thursday, but just before I left, Thursday or Wednesday with Toby, with our bond counsel about refinancing, and we have a few options here that are very advantageous to the city. He's getting some more information, and he'll come to council, brief you one-on-one, and then come to council and speak publicly regarding the refinancing of, we believe it'll probably be 2 different bonds, if I recall. And there's a couple different ways to take the savings, three options for each one. And that'll save us money in FY20. It's not anything we can budget for because we don't know what the savings are. And
Right.
we won't be able to get to you to make the decision, and we won't be able to execute the change until probably November, December, I think he said?
January,
January.
probably.
So
January
that's how that's going to track, but there's considerable savings or considerable cash back depending on what council's wishes are on how to do that, and we'll present that to you as time goes on.
You and I talked about this as well, and 10-year treasuries are around 1.5 yielding.
Right.
Last October, that yield was twice as much, over 3. So yeah, we've got a tremendous opportunity.
So if we could just tap into the German market,
That's
Oh,
right.
man.
they're paying
Take that.
people to take out mortgages.
I thought it would be helpful to, again, show you the primary drivers of what the increases are in the city manager budget for this coming year. The first one there is salaries and wages, almost $600,000. These are all personnel service drivers. Health insurance is up about $216,000. Workers' comp, a little over $63,000, almost $64,000. Retirement contributions, $19,000. So if you add those total up, it's about $883,000 in personnel cost increases from the prior year. And most of those are contractual, based on fire, police, NAGE, civil service contracts.
A point I'd like to make on this slide, and it'll build as we move on with slides if I recall, but when you hear the budget, Mayor and Council, the first thing you ask is, how can this be? And believe me, when I get the budget, I look at Scott and I go, how can this be? How can our budget increase, the budget that's in front of you now, by $1.2 million over last year's budget? Where is that money? Because the book budget, other than the a la carte items, is we mirrored last year's budget as best we could, with the exception of the things that we're obligated to pay for. And it's $1.2 million difference, $1.3 million difference. Here's $882,000 of that $1.3 million right there. It's personnel. That is our biggest investment right there, through 882. I don't think we have another single biggest investment. We have a few large investments, but that is the biggest.
And most of these are commitments we've already made.
That is correct, or possibly about to make at the next budget meeting, or the next council meeting.
Carrying on with that, these are the changes in the person or in the departmental budgets, the largest being police, then fire. Those do include the personnel services cost drivers that were on the previous slide. In addition to the personnel, there's operational drivers, and these are the primary ones. The data processing, that should be 501 department, a little over $200,000 increase. Fleet financing, 158,000. Contractual services, 131. And again, these are all related to specific contracts or programs that are already in place. A couple that Jake had mentioned, the travel per diem, the 38,000. That's a function of two things. One is the city manager's program to increase attendance at professional conferences for staff, and also going to the GSA rate table for
So you mean we
reimbursement.
don't want to compensate them $3 a meal anymore?
Yes, sir. I think we mentioned this
It was a
before.
little unfair before.
We
There's no
sent-
doubt about it. It was extremely unfair.
We send people to places where they're stuck eating expensive food at a non-expensive rate. The GSA rate also is part of the workday coding, if you will, and it's it's not as big of a cost. Moving to the GSA rate was not as big of a cost as the increased amount of people I have traveling for professional development.
And I would,
If I could just,
Please.
because it is a workshop.
Yep.
We're
absolutely.
always looking for ways to cut, and I would suggest that may be something you want to look at. Well, I do support staff development. When the slide before shows us we have rates or other things that, whoops, couple slides before, here we go, 2 slides before on 20, shows there are things that we need to do. We still need to recognize that we need to hold the line somewhere, and it may not be possible to send staff to multiple conferences or to send them every year. There may need to be a rotation, because after all, we are using taxpayer dollars. And I understand you want to go to the GSA rate, but you and I have had a talk about the fact that it is considerably more, and I understand that many of the conferences are in certain locations, but at the end of the day, we've got to be efficient, and there's nothing wrong with saying, you know, you've got X number of dollars to travel. How you choose to spend them, you may need to find a roommate, so you reduce your cost in the room so that you have more for food, or you make some other choices, because even the high-priced example you say, well, breakfast was $28. If the budget is $15, well, go get a coffee and a yogurt, because a lot of these places do have a less expensive bar at the front. And if somebody chooses to eat, you know, a full breakfast, well, then they have to pick up the difference. I'm just suggesting it's not a slam dunk
Right.
that travel per diem, you need to do that. A $38,000 increase is a 50% increase over where you were. You were at 68, you're now going to 106. That is a place you economize. And I'm not buying that, you know, on the operating budget, that we can't find some economies to offset some of the personnel costs that we need to do and we're obligated to do. Just because we spent $500 on paper and pencil last year doesn't mean we can't be more efficient and spend $400 this year.
We've done that throughout the last 4 or 5 years. And,
Well, you're telling me that, but I'm not seeing it in your figures.
It is in the figures. If you go back 5 years, you'll find that we've become more efficient where we can. I believe the economies have been found on the backs of the staff for the past 5 or 6, if not 7 or 8 years, and I'm trying to get that back up to a rate that is something that they deserve. the government rate does not account for lodging. We pay for lodging at the lodging rate if we have to. If people are having a conference at the Marriott, we don't put them up at the Red Roof Inn. I don't think that's a good idea. I think it stymies networking, it stymies relationship building, things that I think are important for people to build relationships and come up with some of these innovative ideas, such as Lynn Stevens has with her crew. Some of that's from conversations with other engineers and other wastewater people. I think it's important. That's why I put that much importance on it. Could I cut from that budget a little bit? I probably could, and I can find some money. But as I've stated a few times since we started in the budget process, our people are the only asset that we buy that doesn't depreciate. We've made great strides to make this organization a lean, functional organization, and we haven't even gotten to the top. Not that we ever will. We get better every day, and I believe this is something that we talked in a different situation about a total package, and pay being one of them. This is what keeps people in government and doesn't have them shift to the private sector. It's, in my opinion, something that we can do that benefits them, and it certainly benefits the city. If I have to cut, I will, but I feel this is important. And as a matter of fact, I feel it's so important, and this is just a pittance, but I would forego my wage increase in October to get this, because my people are more important than that raise to me.
Feel a little strongly about it.
I do. I've worked. This team has worked extremely hard to be great stewards of the city's dollar. Is there places where we can be more efficient? Yes. Have you given us the latitude to be more efficient? Yes. If you look at some of the efficiencies that this team has done in the past 5 years, you wouldn't be more proud. We can't tackle all of it in 1 year, but by golly, we look every time. Somebody asked about how much did you add in the budget for inflation? Well, we didn't. We looked at each line item. We looked at what we used last year. We looked at what we used the past 5 years. We determined why it would be different, more or less, in the next year, and we budgeted appropriately. If a piece of paper cost 5 cents last year and 6 cents this year, we figured out a way to either keep the cost neutral, use less, or things of that nature. So, you know, when our staff's counting paper and pens, and that's not the only thing, that's just where we are, they're working hard to try to save money. One of the areas where in the budget, it's in there and we can reverse course, but 2 or 3 years ago, when we were talking about computers and ERP and things of that nature, I think it was when Mayor Green was on his way out and Mayor Burnett was on his way in. One of the things that Mayor Burnett said before he said buckle up was that he would like to go to virtual clients on all the computers, update the computers, get ERP, and do our best to become paperless. There are some software programs that get us to the next step of paperless. It's e-signature contracting and things of that nature. That if we want to forego that, it's a couple $1,000s here and there. The personnel costs, a couple thousand here and there to cut. Can we save money by putting 2 people in a hotel room? You bet. But again, that lodging cost is not the GSA per diem for meals. So,
Mr. Manager, the only thing I'm asking is that you understand this is taxpayer dollars, and I'm asking you to take another look. I'm not questioning that staff isn't valuable, but when we first met, the first meeting in July, we were presented with a document that, oh my goodness, this is what you need to have. Council directed you to go back and take another look, and lo and behold, you came back with economies. That's all I'm asking you here, and I'm pointing out that there are some areas to do that. I'm not going to tell you where to do that, but I'm giving you a suggestion based on a conversation you and I had where you supported some changes and ways to economize travel. So I just want to leave it that I'm expressing what I believe I'm hearing from the citizens. They only have so many dollars.
right.
They understand that costs have gone up, but they're saying they can't necessarily continue to contribute every time you see a cost, and they're asking you to rethink, to do things smarter, and to come up with ways to economize. That's not challenging that city staff
Right.
isn't creative, that they haven't done it, but it's asking you to adopt a challenge to see where else we can economize to be prudent for the taxpayers.
Part of the process. Part of the process. Anybody else, any other comments on this item while we're on it, on the operations?
I've got one,
service?
Mayor. If you look at the last 2, they're negative. Actually, they're lower than they were before. So
There you go.
in uniforms, they've gone through and come up with economies for that. And they've been able to negotiate better insurance rates with savings of $106,000.
Perfect.
So not everything's going up.
It's good stuff.
Okay, the next slide identifies, and Jake had mentioned the ERP system, Workday. It's a significant investment that the city is making and has made. If you look at the green highlighted items there, total ongoing costs of Workday are about $883,000, consisting of a training obligation for the year 2, lease and replacement fund payback, $160,000 a year, and the annual Workday subscription fee of about $279,000. And that will be offset somewhat by the Navaline component for the general fund going away, but we'll still have the utility one until we select a new utility system.
Who is it that said that spending money on software to become more efficient and save money is not cheap?
Hopefully
There it is
we'll be
right
able to
there.
use those efficiencies to provide better information and quicker. And-
Scott, all these, back at the personnel service cost drivers, page 20.
Sorry, I
21.
was corrected on that, the $468,000.
Well, page 21. These are all, some of our salaries are covered through enterprise funds as well. Are they in this?
This is just general fund.
This is just general?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The final slide I have is the à la carte selection. If you look at the different color coding, the top items are those that you'd identified as funding from fund balance. Excuse me, the 2 items in blue in the center there are the ones you said you were not quite ready to make a determination, but we, for the millage calculation, concluded those in the mill rate. And the green are the ones that you identified that you would be willing to fund through millage. On the right-hand side, just for your information, the rollback rate again is 4.371. The max millage, 4.5677. If you take the max millage minus the a la carte, you'd be at 4.43809. The a la carte mills are just a little under 0.13 mills. The table at the bottom shows that $426,000 were funded by millage and $156,000 funded by fund balance. So Kevin is here with that spreadsheet, and if you'd like to go through each line item, we can identify what the rate would be based on those items that you would like to delete. And if you'd like to add an item, we can do that also.
Scan, do me a favor. I want to reaffirm what we've done. Scan the spreadsheet up to the items in gray that we all went through before at the prior workshop. Those are the items. You can see it on the screen. You can see it on your in front of you. Those are the items that we all went through collectively. Maybe not all of us, but maybe most of us have decided to fund. Is there anything? Are we all still good with the things that we agreed to there?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there anything there that you don't like that you want to fight for? You want to fight Lynn about that forklift, for one thing.
No.
Just a reminder there, Mayor, that on those fire station equipment items, those are at 90% of the original cost. So those numbers there are the 90%.
Okay.
And then on the forklift, only 65% of the $32,000
Right.
cost is funded by general fund.
Okay. Before we went on everything else, I just wanted to reaffirm the decisions we've already made. Okay. Moving down to the items in blue. Information Security Administrator. Out of the 501.
And Jamie is here if you'd like some additional information on that too.
Just a refresher. I think it pretty much speaks for itself, but I think it couldn't hurt to have a refresher on what it is that we're trying to accomplish with that. And of course, she had to sit all the way in the back behind how many people?
She was confident she wasn't going to get called up.
No, never.
No, that's what secured it.
Mayor and Council, thank you. This position,
Who are you again?
Jamie Miller, Administrative Services Director. This position is a new request in our IT division, which you can see is out of the 501 fund, but does have a tail that flows through the general fund, as you see here. So this position is intended currently doing the job of making sure our items are secure and that we are trying our best to keep up with the ongoing threats towards our data and our infrastructure security in the IT world. This is a task that is spread amongst 4 or 5 current employees, and we feel that as the items progress on this, that we need to have a dedicated resource on this to make sure that we're keeping up and in order to limit that liability for the city.
Talk about a hot topic at Florida League of Cities, the number of cities that are having issues because they're
And
getting
ransom.
the ransomware.
They're in Texas now,
It's a
right?
tremendous problem.
Is that where they're
Texas got hit
plucking
recently,
Texas
too.
pretty hard right now?
Yep.
Hopefully they're done with Florida.
Jamie, is this full year, or is the assumption 9 months or 6 months?
I believe this one is a full year, yes.
Okay.
Questions about that? You guys want to go through them all and then come back and decide, or do you want to decide as we go? Doesn't matter to me. I think sometimes you go through, decide as you go, and then get to the end and you realize you don't have a lot of money left. Is everybody good with adding Information Security Administrator?
It's, so just to clarify, it's already in the budget. You just haven't made a definitive, I haven't moved it up to the,
I get that.
yeah, okay, but it is in the budget.
It's in the
Currently.
5 or 4 point.
It's in the budget that you have right now, yes. sir.
Okay.
The one we just briefed.
That's a
I'd like to
4.5.
move it to either a 9-month or 6-month, because I think realistically, by the time you advertise, get it filled.
So any
I don't want to
new
wait
position.
6 months. I know there's a real reality is by the time we do this, you're having somebody on by October 1st is probably not going to happen. But the sense of urge, I don't want to go 6 months. I think that's too long. Jamie, you disappeared. I got a question for you.
I didn't go as far this time.
Okay, I noticed that. So I rewarded you by calling you back up again.
I appreciate
If
that.
we were to approve the budget, get through first reading, get through second reading, at what point realistically would you start to advertise and possibly have somebody on board, realistically?
So from a human resources perspective, we're able to look forward and post contingent positions. So we would say this position is being posted contingent upon approval of the budget. So we could start the process early in order
It's
to get
September
it
1st
through.
now, though, right?
Correct, it's
So-
already,
So it wouldn't be contingent by the time we did our first interview.
right, we could, but not by the time of the first interview.
Right.
But we could definitely have it posted before 10/1 and collecting applications.
Probably hired by, and
December.
first day, November 1st, December 1st?
We have a pretty aggressive staff who wants this, so I'm sure that if we set the November 1st deadline, they would try to meet it, but we will serve to whatever you guys find is advantageous for the budget.
So we can certainly shave at least 1 month off.
But
Mayor, why don't we shoot-
On the other hand, it's also very important to pick,
The right
you know,
person.
don't rush and pick a candidate that
Oh, for
could
this?
do the job, but like to get the best candidate, you know, if it took a little
And-
more time.
And Councilmember Ford brought up the topic of whether this position is budgeted at an appropriate amount to meet market, and we discussed that maybe not, and it may result in whether we fleet staff up.
You don't
So that,
know
of
until you
course, would
start-
cause a vacancy to have to then
Yeah.
fill again, so we
And
could
you,
see some
and you won't know that
flexibilities.
for sure until you advertise it and
That's
see what
right.
kind of applicants you get.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm gonna tell you something. This position pays for itself the first time we don't have a ransomware attack.
Sure.
That's the other way of thinking about
Risk
it. But I'm-
avoidance.
if we realistically are not gonna have anybody on until November 1st at the earliest,
Earliest.
I see a sense of urgency about this, but I don't see a need to budget for all 12 months if it's gonna be an 11-month thing.
Sure.
I mean, if you wanna do less, we can do less, but
Jamie, let's shoot for January 1st and go with 9 months the first year.
Sounds good. Thank you.
With the council's.
council, we
concurrence.
good with that?
Yeah,
9 months?
certainly.
And I think certainly the need is there, no doubt about it.
Thank
And if
you.
we get a ransomware attack on Thanksgiving, I don't wanna hear it.
Sorry, no guarantees, so,
No.
but we will definitely have better efforts put
Yeah,
towards
and
James,
this.
certainly
let that
having
happen between
the,
now and then.
and certainly having the position would lessen our risk, I would take it, but there's no guarantees that if somebody wants to get in there and do damage and get that
Sure.
ransomware in and hack in, they're gonna do it.
Oh, we can never eliminate any risk,
Exactly.
of course. Education efforts help, but we're only
Yeah.
as strong as our employee who is the least technical savvy and has the chance to click on things. So,
Yeah.
of course, a big portion of this job will be the education effort to the employees of why it's so
Okay.
important they pay
Very
attention to
good.
this.
Council's everybody settled on that? 9 months?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next one is the police custodian. The chief thinks having a clean building is kind of important. And he's asking for an additional full-time person.
Mm.
Comments or questions of the man himself?
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Chief Tom Grimaldi, Police Department. Here for your questions. And let me start with, I hear council, I hear the message that is being sent clearly. And so I want to work with you on that and trying to balance having a building that the maintenance is starting to, it's a fairly new building. It's, I think, about 10 years old now. But the maintenance is starting to show its wear and tear and probably shouldn't be. So trying to balance that with the message that's being sent and to save our and be good stewards of our taxpayer dollars. I think Council Member Ford had asked, or somebody on the dais had asked about a month ago about potential part-time. I can't remember which council member did.
Might have been I was just gonna bring that up.
Yeah.
Could you survive with a part-timer?
And I
for
had
now?
made comment then that I probably could. I certainly, we were looking at the impact of moving from another full-time custodian to a part-time custodian. As I explained, there's standards, there's levels of standards that for cleanliness of buildings. If we were to move to a part-time position, according to the standard level, it wouldn't increase the standard level. But I will tell you that, in honesty, we will see the difference, I think. I truly believe we will see that difference. The standard level, we may not go from a level 4 up to a level 3 by the standard itself. But I do believe, even with a part-time position, we will see a difference in that building. I will tell you that what I looked at, and I came back after it was asked to look at the part-time, the difference was significant because we're not paying benefits. So it's approximately $12,600, $625, excuse me. There's no benefits on that. That'd be a 20-hour work week.
Yeah.
And we plan on doing like a 5 hours per day or something, work that out. But we do believe we'd see a difference because we'd be able to take some of those tasks off our current full-time custodian and provide those other tasks to the part-time. So you asked me to come up with that, and I present that to you.
Okay. I think I'd expressed this last time we talked about it, is that I kind of prefer a progressive approach to problem solving, that instead of going all the way from point A to point B, let's see how much we need to add. And I think if a part-time person doesn't do it, then maybe we talk about a full-time person next year. I prefer a bit more of a progressive approach. Because quite frankly, the full-time custodian you have now might become more productive because of it. I think there are a lot of elements in the equation that we don't know, and before we throw too many resources at it.
And this strategy does provide a $20,000 savings. So.
Mm-hmm. What do y'all think?
I think part-time.
Scott?
Yeah, that's fine.
Chase?
Okay, right now.
Marilyn?
Fine.
Part-time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. All right, that gets us out of the blue. All right, Dr. Scott, we are in the green, which is the items we had totally up in the air for one reason or another.
These are all the ones that were approved by a majority of the council.
Okay.
And also, if you'll notice that we're making the changes as we go along, so those two have already been identified.
Yeah, I can't wait till you scroll down so I can see the bottom numbers.
I thought we had a question on code enforcement,
We're not there yet.
that we weren't sure whether we wanted
Right.
1, 2, or 3.
I think we have one in there at 47,000.
This is two, Mayor.
Is it two?
No, it looks
Kind of
like
split on
3.
the council. Originally it's 3, but it's 2. $52,000.
It says leave in at 2 officers on the bottom line.
Ah, gotcha.
2
Okay.
votes for 2, 2 votes for 1, leave
Leave
in
in
at
at
2.
2. So that's what
Well,
we-
but I thought it was leave in for 2 right now. We were gonna come back and discuss it.
Yeah, it's
Because
at
I
two.
was one of those
Yeah.
for the 2, and the more I've thought about it, I'm willing to go to 1 using the incremental idea.
That was
can
kind of my
change-
thought.
We can change anything on this paper.
Thus the nature of a spreadsheet.
You bet.
And I too is thinking along the same lines, Marilyn. I personally think that you could probably double the number of code officers with the work that's out there, but I don't know the impact of that. They're again progressive problem solving. What do y'all think? Drew, you have an opinion?
I'm kind of okay with the 3, and I know that's not the number up there, but it's, I'd say the code enforcement activities and the job, it's not getting any easier, it's getting harder, and there's more of it, and it's understaffed now. And I'd like to be able to provide them some additional help if possible, but I mean, if the council wants to go with 2,
I'm good with that, but I think when we initially voted, I was thinking 3.
Scott, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that there's a lot of places in the city that are aging that need more code enforcement oversight, and we have kicked the can for a really long time, and we have without question outgrown the abilities of our code enforcement staff to deliver the type of oversight that we need, especially in the older areas of the city. You know, some of the areas that still have homeowners associations somewhat aid us with our code enforcement, because a lot of those HOA things are code enforcement things, and so we pick up, we gain there, right? So in those areas we tend to gain a lot of oversight, but in the older areas of our city, you just can't help but ride around out there and see fences falling over in disrepair, you know, just all kinds of things. It's not hard to go and see those things, but you got to have people to provide the oversight and the enforcement if the objective is to keep the city looking good and to have you know, at least you know, I'm not looking for a heavy-handed strict code enforcement process, but I think we have to decide at what level of service and protection of the quality of life in the city and the investments do we want to be looking at. And that's really kind of what this comes down to, you know. So
Chase, your thoughts?
Mayor, I said no to about 95% of these, so I don't have much to say. I'm gonna stay consistent.
Consistent with what?
My no positions on.
You don't want to add to code enforcement?
Nope.
Okay.
so is it because of that, Jace, that you're okay with the level that we have? Because I think that's the discussion we're trying to have, is are we okay with the level that we have now? Or is there a need to, because we can move things around. So like if you see like in your district, you think that we need more code enforcement, then maybe there's something else we need to move.
No, I
get that.
I think, you know, you just mentioned a second ago, do we want to over-police ourselves and over-code ourselves? I like to think that we can police ourselves with our code enforcement. We have a problem, people should call it in, if they don't. You know, I don't want to be
They
the
do,
guy
and there's so
going
many
around
problems
knocking
now,
on
they
doors.
can't keep up. That's the problem.
I will send things in to Jake that need code enforcement, and they don't get taken care of right away. And if they're coming from me and they don't get taken care of right away, I know that there's an issue. I would hope some of the things that I point out get a little bit more priority. Just saying.
So the
Yeah, I
sign's
hear you.
still
I
there,
haven't
is what I'm
had,
hearing.
I haven't had that issue. I mean, I get an
Citywide.
issue, I call in usually to Alan, and it's handled. I just haven't experienced the problem, me personally.
Spend some time in District 1, my friend. Marilyn, what are your thoughts?
I would prefer one, because I really think we need to keep the community services officer, the evidence technician, actually the clean building. Might I suggest one for 12 months and one for 6 months? So you phase them in, so you get to 2 by the end of the year. It may be not as efficient for the chief, because it may be better to get 2 at the same time, so you could train them, but that way you
Still comes with a
could,
cost.
yeah.
Mayor, and if I could, I was thinking along the same lines. I was laying awake last night thinking of trying to get creative and trying to come up with some ideas on this, and thought of it very similar. I could even go to 9 and 6 months.
I was going to ask you, would you rather have 2
which
at
would take a
9?
little bit of the
Oh,
sting
that'd
out,
be-
because we're not paying for that 3 months, because that'll give me time to, just like Jamie Miller would give me time to post it, interview, and get the right people, and get them charged up and ready to go. So I'd be even willing to do that, to take a little sting out of it, to get the 2.
And Mayor, one of the things that I know you know, but I'm going to mention it anyhow. These 6 month, 12, 6 month, 9 month things are great this year. They
Good.
really hit the bill. And if you think back to that big red bar that Dr. Neal showed you earlier in personnel costs, in that cost, it's not all just our people. Some of those people are 1 year people that were 6-month people last year. So just keep that in mind next year that we're kicking the can on a 12-month guy by a year slightly. So
If you're gonna pay
it doesn't hurt as bad next year. I got that, but it is included in that big number this year for what we did last year. Which I think we did. We ended up with 5 or 6 not 1 year personnel changes. So just for a data point.
I appreciate that, and
Yep.
frankly, I was leaning towards just one myself because I wanted to be able to spread the dollars out so we can do some other things there for you, but I think we can get consensus with 2 at 9 months.
No, he said 9 and 6.
9 and 6.
Or 9 and 6, I'm sorry.
Yep.
I think we can get consensus at 9 and 6.
Yeah.
I vehemently
Yeah,
agree with
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So 9 and 6 is consensus.
Do we have consensus? Any
No,
objections?
That was
Let me ask you
nine
that
more
way.
code officers? Was that what you're saying? Yeah.
9 more code officers for 6
We
months.
should do it for the whole year, but I'll take what I can get.
Well played.
How'd we
9
get the
and
code?
6.
We skipped like 5 things. Okay,
Because the question came up.
I got it.
Question came up for code after the custodian.
I thought I heard the other stuff was agreed to.
I think it was 9 and 6. One at 9-month and one at 6-month, I believe.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sliding down.
We go to the top up there, Mayor, that's Jamie again, HR Administrator.
Mm-hmm.
Hello again, Jamie Miller, Administrative Services Director. This training coordinator is a position that we are requesting in order to keep up with a number of items, including safety training. With the new ERP, we have an increased expectation that employees and supervisors will be trained properly on the system. So this position would be in charge of handling some of those affairs. Supervisory training, preparing employees for succession planning, identifying, doing work job analysis to ensure that we have the appropriate job descriptions and training assigned to each employee, a number of items, but if you have any questions. And
We
this
had
is an
consen-
April position currently.
We had a consensus before. Anybody want to change their mind? Okay.
Thank you.
Next is for the city attorney. Margaret? Margaret?
Happy birthday, Margaret.
Thank you, Mayor.
Happy birthday.
Margaret Roberts, City Attorney.
We didn't all break out in song when I said that, so
That's okay.
I figured it was okay.
We can now if you'd like, though.
This is the reclassification.
Right, and the addition of administrative assistant at the entry level.
Okay. And once again, this is something we, anybody want to change their mind about?
I'm good with it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Happy birthday again.
Thank you.
Chief Fuston's on his way up.
With a calculator. Ruh-roh.
Always
What the-
thinking.
Public math.
I tell you.
Ken Fuston, Fire Chief. Yes, we're asking for an additional $15,000 in overtime for weekend transport coverage. Based on the numbers that we're seeing so far, I feel that this $15,000 investment could net us about $100 to $110,000 additional in ambulance revenue. We're still averaging 3.5 transports a day. We could pick up 7 more per weekend. Multiply that out by 52. Multiply that by about
Times
the
the
300 per transport
expected.
average.
Yeah.
I think that 15,000 will get us about 100 grand in revenue. So personally, I think it's money well spent.
I think that sometimes we look at the cost of something, and we forget that there is revenue associated with it. And this is one of those. Anybody want to change their mind about this one?
Not that I want to change anybody's mind, but Kevin or Scott, what did we budget for revenue for transport? Do you recall?
This year or next year?
In 20.
350?
But more than last year, which was 0.
Last year was 60.
This
60.
year, we budgeted 67.
We severely under budgeted
Yeah.
last year, and I think we knew it.
So
It
that's it's going to take us a few years to figure out what our new normal is, but I think we're in the 300, and that was a pretty conservative number based on what Chief's doing now, based on the collection rates and a little bit of data pulling from the county as well.
If I remember correctly, and this is just me going from memory, I think that we were budgeting 1.68 transports as opposed to 3.41 we're doing now at a much lower collection
For
rate.
last year.
For last
Yes,
year,
or this current.
which I want to say was
Right.
around 40%, and we're seeing in the 60s to 70s. So we're definitely outperforming.
And I think that's directly attributed to the new care package, how it was negotiated with the county, with Director Pozo and his team.
Which
So
was one of the
it's working out well
contingencies
for
I gave you
everybody.
before I said yes to it.
Right.
Working out well for
And
everybody.
Chief, also, aren't we under the overtime prediction for this year too?
We continue to track under, but it's
so-
creeping up. This yesterday was a 3rd-week pay period.
Okay.
My admin assistant was out today, so I do not have that.
No,
figure in
it's fine,
front
but
of me.
I know we're trending to be under the line which you predicted, so if that continues, this
Pull out the
really is.
overtime we paid for the
it's-
Hurricane Michael deployment, we're still trending under.
Yeah, it's really a no-brainer.
Okay.
Anybody want to change your mind?
No, fully support it.
Okay.
Next is Parks Department.
Palm tree trimming,
We
which
brought in-
should have had, but didn't have, but now have, but need to do.
We brought in the
I think
pro
I
today.
summarized it right.
Yes, sir.
Kevin, have you been in front of council yet?
I have not. So, good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. Kevin Sweat, Parks Manager, 2 months on the job.
Is Susan throwing out another first pitch tonight or something?
She's doing her presidential duties, right?
Actually,
Yeah.
she's being appointed tomorrow as
Tomorrow.
president of
Oh,
Oh,
the Park
nice.
Association for the state of Florida. So, yes.
Awesome.
So, probably better than the first pitch.
There you go. Very good. That is
Welcome
great.
to our side of the town.
Great.
Well, thank you.
So we got the palm tree trimming, and the other one was we talked about resodding the outfields on a regular schedule, one per year.
Yeah.
Anybody want to change their mind about those things or have questions?
I thought one of those. Oh, nope.
Good.
Yeah, we took
It's
out
in a
the-
different area and it's where that's what I was misremembering.
Okay.
Not a problem.
The only thing I want to comment on that is that's one of those areas where, like Marilyn was talking about, we need to look at economy and look at, sometimes you're going to get a better deal if you do more than one field at a time, or maybe you've got other areas.
Sure.
And I'd rather, if we have those additional funds available, if those stars align correctly, I want to make sure that's brought back to council. We try to take
Exactly.
advantage of that and do that.
Bring it
and
back
offset
to us,
for the
we'll look
future
at it if it
right?
happens.
So just kind of keep an eye on that and keep that in mind, so.
Absolutely.
Okay. Welcome and thanks.
Thank you. You made it way too easy on my first job, by the way.
Well, we can bring
can
it back
change
up.
it.
You can talk
It'll
about
get
it.
worse, Kevin, believe me. It'll get worse.
The last mayor here didn't like palm trees. We can do this again.
Wait till the grass on Southwinds goes to, you know what.
You bet.
You'll be back.
Scott,
Good.
is there a way, you've already adjusted the code enforcement one, could we do the vehicles to reflect the 6 and 9 month?
We did not do that yet, but you're right, we need to do
The
that.
vehicle costs won't change.
The vehicle yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
It'll-
But we wouldn't have to buy them as our, yeah, same.
You're spending.
But
Hey, I'm trying to everywhere we go.
Scott
do you
tried
buy
not.
half a truck?
Scott tried not to chuckle, but he could.
Well, over the period of the year, the lease, the repayment. Okay.
It won't
Yeah,
change the
you
purchase.
can't get out of this
It will
one.
change the
Just let it
amortization,
go.
but not the purchase. It's
I'm-
just
I am
timing
being
when we buy
so
it.
good right now.
So,
Okay,
next
back
two
to
items are
police.
for the chief, please.
Community service, reclass evidence.
Good evening, Tom Grimaldi, Police Chief. Which one are we looking at the CSO position? Yeah.
We are?
Okay. So the CSO position, just to refresh, our plans are to assign that officer to the front desk assignment, and that would allow us to not call in officers off the road and be able to keep our officers on the road. So right now, the way we do is we call in officers off the road if somebody comes in to the front desk and they have to take that call for service. If we have a CSO up there, it'd be a civilian employee. They can take those calls. We're talking the minor calls. Any of the major calls, they'll always need a police officer. But typically, what we encounter in the front desk are the stolen plate complaints, vandalisms without suspects, type of things that most people are going to need some type of report from us,
yeah.
some kind of something for their insurance. So we do provide that service, but right now we're currently pulling officers in off the road, and it does affect our staffing on the road.
Okay. And go ahead and give us the other one too.
The other one was
We'll comment on them together.
Okay, the reclass.
Yeah.
So last year we had talked about an evidence. We originally had requested an evidence supervisor for our evidence unit. Our evidence unit, they do a phenomenal job. There's a lot of evidence and property coming in and out of there. Particularly now, we're dealing with digital evidence more than we've ever dealt with before. It seems like every call we go on, there's digital evidence. Of course, we live on our phones, so does everybody else. So with that being said, we were looking for an evidence supervisor. Last year, we didn't quite get the evidence supervisor, but we did have those conversations. I think Councilman Stiltner brought up one of our neighbors to the north of us that ran into some problems in their evidence unit, and that is typically one of the places where in a police department where you'll see most times where problems will occur. Not saying we have a problem. We have 3 people that work in our evidence unit right now that do a phenomenal job for us. It's just given that oversight. Again, it's growing. The stuff is there's more tasks to do in there, particularly with the body worn cameras. We get requests for those all the time. So I'm asking to reclass that position that we received last year to up it to a supervisor position so we can have some supervisory level. Currently, what I'm doing is I'm bringing our CID captain down to our evidence room, trying to do daily supervision, but it's very difficult to try to do that and then supervise the cases out of CID, our detective division, the major cases. So that would lighten the load there so that our CID captain can concentrate on running our detective bureau. And this supervisor position would report directly to the CID supervisor, or captain rather. So that's what we'd like to do. I'd like to just change that a little bit to make it a supervisory pay rate. And I think it was 5,000. I'm sorry, let me look at the number.
And those are the two things, the
55.
CSO and the reclassification. Those are the things we've already decided on. Anybody want to change their mind or have follow-up questions? Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor.
And let's see where Jamie's sitting this
Yep,
time.
she's on her way already.
You generally don't have to tell me twice, so. Good afternoon again, Jamie Miller, Administrative Services Director. This last one on the list for you is our multi-factor authentication in our IT division again. Name of the game for us, as you can see, is security of our data. So this is a well-established program. Law enforcement has been using this for a very long time, and what it does is it requires you use 2 sources of ID to access data. So our first priority would be to implement this with our Workday software in order to secure our financial data with the same integrity that we do some of our other FDLE related data. And then we would expand that to the other services that are able to handle that multi-factor authentication. We have been working with the Department of Homeland Security recently. They offer a lot of really fantastic free and reduced cost programs to help local municipalities try to avoid some of these ransomware attacks. And one of the main things that they're seeing in some of these areas that are being targeted and where they're being successful in hitting them is that they do not have this in place. So it is something that comes highly recommended.
Any follow-up questions or comments for Jamie? Or anybody want to change your mind about that?
Thank you.
Nobody thinks that's a bad idea, I guess? Thank you.
Mayor, that concludes your first run through this. You can see Kevin's got it there on the, just right below. 0.02 mils is what has been reduced from the millage rate. So instead, it started at 0.129607, now at 0.107994.
Which is
Total funded went from 582,000 down to 511,000.
We knocked $71,000 off tonight.
Correct.
And what's the rate? What's the new rate? The new millage?
0.107994.
4 point.
No, the not to exceed rate, it would,
Got
that,
it. It hasn't changed. Got it.
Oh, that has changed.
4.4
Not to-
if we had
less
10.
on.
oh, if we did the less, if
we'd
the
taken them
green
all away.
items, if we took those out, we can get it to 4.45?
With the ones you took out, you're 4.45.
Yeah, we're at
No,
4.
wait a minute.
No, we're at
It didn't change.
4.4.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right.
The millage did not change.
Okay.
Yes, it's down 0.02.
7.
Where is it? 4.1.
Right.
4.47 should be.
No,
It's down
Scott.
0.02.
down to 4.02 to 4.5477.
So if you take 0.54677 and subtract that, you're
That's what I want them to see.
0.54.
Yeah, 0.5461. So next time we do that, make that graph reflect, yeah, there you go, Kev. There you go. Minus the one you just did.
1.5461. That's what it should be.
That'll help. It's 4.5677, which was the max millage rate, minus 0.02161, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
4.54609.
I know, Kev. It's tough public math.
4.54609 or 61, because you got to go to 4 decimal points and not 5.
There you go, 4.5461
You got to round. There you go.
is what we're at now.
Which brings us from 4.5 to 4. Percentage-wise increase over rollback.
Oh, yes, over rollback, yes. Got it.
Okay.
That concludes our presentation. Be happy to answer any other questions, Mayor.
Comments, questions, anyone? I tell you what, before I let everybody have their piece, certainly a workshop like this is not easy because there are a lot of wants and needs and we got tough decisions. And I know that our wants and needs go beyond the things that you guys have brought forward and asked, so we appreciate the pruning that goes on before we get here. The one thing that I would like to see us do moving forward is when we get the math up here as we go, this is very helpful. So we did this time. That initial workshop when we're going through all that, I think we should do the same thing. So the public sees what we're seeing and we're seeing the math right in front of us, so that we see the impact of what we're doing. Comments, Scott,
No, I've got nothing else.
Drew,
No, I don't have anything further tonight.
Chase?
Yeah, just a quick comment. While I say no to a lot of these items, it's not that I don't think these requests are important. I mean, I know they are. I'm not blind to our needs. I'm really not. I mean, and I think we've got the best staff imaginable. I mean, I have the utmost respect and appreciation for our staff, for our manager's office, and our department heads. Where I'm conflicted time and time again is that every dollar, and just so people know where I'm coming from, it's no secret. I'm consistent with my standpoints. Every dollar that I agree to is a dollar we don't have. I got to go and ask for it from a taxpayer. And I don't operate my personal funds that way. And I can, in good conscience, operate other people's money that way. That's not to discount the importance of anything. I mean, I get what we're here to do. But when I look at a trim notice that has a $350 tax increase, 75 of it's from Port Orange, that's a lot of money to people. So, so where I'm coming from is everything that's asked, I'm seeing it's a dollar that I don't have. So that's, just wanted to put those comments out, so there's, no question as to where I'm coming from. But that being said, terrific presentation. I can't disagree with anybody up here on the dais, and anybody's comments and anybody's positions. Everybody, we come to it from a different angle.
Marilyn?
Thanks, Mayor.
Well, I think we've moved the rate down a little. I'd like to see it go down another 0.5%. And I think I have been in favor of personnel that I think really are needed to do the job, and equipment, what we've gone through here on the a la carte. And I suspect that the department directors know where they can squeeze the greatest, and so I would hope that, Mr. Manager, you and your department heads would see if you can't wring out a little bit more, because I think that would be the best for our citizens, for them to have confidence. Trust was talked about earlier, that we're doing all we can to recognize increased needs like code enforcement with, aging buildings and an expanding city, and the care program, and yet that we're trying the hardest we can to be as frugal with the resources that we've been given. And it's not to say that department directors haven't been frugal now, but I think all of us can, even in our own lives, say, well, maybe I could forego that cup of coffee every 2 weeks to once a month or whatever, or the latte, make it a regular. And so I think that's what I would ask the manager and staff continue to do. Look and see if you can't come back. If we can't find another $500,000 in a $40 million budget, then we're not doing our jobs, I think.
So the challenge is, take a look and see what you can bring back to us. I'm not gonna leave it so open-ended.
Okay.
In other words, I wouldn't mind for you to go back and scrub through it, because
I scrub through it every day, I do.
I know you
Yeah.
do. I mean, we were doing it together this morning. I would challenge you to do that, but when you do that also, if you find something we can live without, great, but if you find something that you think that you can save some money on it, great, but we should know the impact of that as well.
Yes, sir.
Because I don't think
As a-
telling you to go back and find us some money and kind of taking us off the hook for it, we can't do that in entirety. If you can find those things, great, but if it has an impact, you bring that back to us and we'll decide.
Sure. And so a few points based on things I've seen elsewhere is I put the onus on the department heads 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and again this year, to bring me back a budget with no fluff. I don't have the exact figures, but if you recall last year, Tracy reported end of year that we executed 98% of our budget. And that's counting the money that comes in. We just had like a $230,000 dump that we weren't planning on this year. And that's part of that number. That wasn't something that happened in the budget. It just ended up in our laps, and it will roll probably at the end of the year because it wasn't part of the budget. And we've gotten progressively better. Last year, I think, was our best year at 98%. And I think that's a good budget execution rate. We'll see what it is this year. But I've asked my staff to come up with a budget that once they gave it to me, we worked together and cut some other stuff. As a matter of fact, Lynn cut $1 million tonight. It's not in the general fund, but we cut it tonight. We've looked at all the budgets and whittled it down to what we think is safe. I do not want to under budget and come to you with a low budget and have to ask for money throughout the year. That's not smart. So what we're doing by doing this is by subconscious bias, people will come in high in the future knowing that they'll have to trim something. And I'll always trim, but I provide you a budget that's ready to be signed, based on me as the CEO making those decisions. Can I find money in that budget? I can find you probably $3 million in that budget.
Great.
I'll do it. But I don't want to hear about anything the rest of the year. Why is the sign on the corner of the McDonald's? Because I don't have code people for that. Why is this? Why is that? Why? It all builds up. You're happy when you sign the budget, and then you're not happy the rest of the year. I did that 2 years ago, and it wasn't a pretty year for me. Because we gave you the budget you wanted and then heard about it all year long. So we got to be careful how we do that budget. I will go back yet again.
I'm not saying that I'm looking for things that shouldn't be there. I
Right.
would think that they're not there in the first place. Sometimes that's going to happen, and I expect that you'd find those through the combing. Look for some opportunities. That's what I'm asking you to do. Look for some opportunities.
And I'll do that.
Okay.
But you know where I stand with the budget right now. So
Right now, today,
got it.
live it, eat it, sleep with it until second reading. Anything else come before us this evening?
I do have a few things, Mayor.
Bring it on.
Tropical event Dorian is right around the corner, whatever we're going to call that now. It's got a chance of well, it will affect us regardless of whether it hits us, whether it becomes a hurricane, whether it doesn't. Rest assured that the staff is making preps for that. Some of us are trying to get out of town for the 4-day holiday. Some of us aren't going to make it, possibly. But we're getting sandbags out. We ordered sand, Lynn. Ordered sand. We're looking at the DMS site, which is already picked out tomorrow. We're contracting our debris removal people. We'll be contacting, if we haven't already, our first 24 push team, local guys. We'll talk to solid waste and make sure we're all on track for that. I suggest we tentatively, as a crew here on the dais, plan for a Thursday or Friday special meeting in case over the weekend it looks like it might hit us, and the city manager needs emergency authority to take action as necessary, which you've done in the past. And I'll provide an update of our preparations then as well.
Okay. I am unavailable Thursday evening.
Okay?
But
Friday?
Friday morning, is there any issues with anybody? First thing Friday?
I wouldn't be until after 1 o'clock.
Robin will coordinate. We'll find a time that works for you all on Friday, and get a quorum and come on in.
Okay. What
You
else
good?
you got?
I believe that's it.
Alrighty. Thank you.